Okay, welcome back. This is class number 3 of our series on the book of Ruth, Megillas Ruth, Kindness and Commitment, a journey through the book of Ruth. And we are in chapter 2. We just started the chapter, which means we fell behind pace, but we'll see today if we can catch up. I'm not so confident, but we'll do what we can. And we're starting, we left off chapter 2. I think we read verse 3, just to recap what's going on. So in chapter 1, this wealthy man, Elimelech, he leaves with his family from the land of Israel and goes to Moab to avoid a famine that's going on in the land of Israel, to avoid having to support the poor. And Elimelech dies. His sons, Machon and Kilion, marry Moabite women, Moabite princesses, according to Chazal. They are Ruth and Orpah. Machon and Kilion die. Naomi, the wife of Elimelech, decides it's time to return to Israel. She tries to convince her daughters-in-law not to come with her. Orpah agrees and goes back home. But Ruth says, I'm coming with you. And Ruth comes with Naomi to the land of Israel. Upon their return in chapter 2, they are poor. They own property. Naomi's family owns property, but it's being abandoned. It's not planted. So they have no food. And so they are forced to do what poor people do when they don't have food, which is go collect from what we call matnos aniyim, the gifts of the poor, the sections or the leavings in fields that the poor are allowed to collect from. We have in the Torah 3 categories of that. Leket. Leket is individual stocks that the farmers have dropped in the process of harvesting. So it would be 1 or 2 stocks would be leket. Anything more than that would not be leket. Then we have shichacha. Shichacha is actual bundles of grain, of stocks of grain that the farmers have collected. There also, I believe it's 1 or 2 stocks, 1 or 2 bundles would be shichat if they were forgotten in the process. The poor have the right to those. There's a third category, which is peah, which is to leave over the corners of the fields, although that doesn't seem to get much mention over here. So it could be, I think I saw actually that it was more competitive to get the peah because it was more defined, and all the poor could kind of just descend on it, and Ruth, who goes to collect, is looking more for the leket, things that not everybody's going to know about, and you won't have to fight it out over. So she goes and she happens to come to the field belonging to Boaz, who happens to be related to them, and I say happen to because it's obviously not just happenstance. This is all ordained. This is all hashkacha. It's ordained by Hashem, by God, that it should play out this way. And that's where we find ourselves in verse 3 of chapter 2, where it said that she went and she collected, she gathered in the field. We mentioned last week, we left off. I just want to mention it again because we have a similar idea that the Vilna Gaon says that the way that she collected, the verse says, in verse 3, Vatelech vatavo, she went and she came. Why does it say she went and she came? The Vilna Gaon says she first went to the other end of the field and didn't collect anything on the way, even though she may have passed these leket stocks that had dropped and she would technically have a right to collect them. She didn't, because then she would have to carry them all the way to the end and then back. This way she would save herself from having to carry them in that direction, and she would just get everything on her way back in one sweep of the field. And we mentioned that this was also a symbol of the bitachon, the faith in Hashem to provide for her that she had, which is that Hashem will provide. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to do my hishtadlus. I'll put in the effort. I'm going to go collect. And wherever Hashem gives me, that's what I'm supposed to get. And so she's not so insistent on grabbing every opportunity, everything she sees. She does it with more of a relaxed attitude. God will take care of me. I'm going to go to the end of the field. I'm going to come back and take whatever it is that Hashem provides for me. And we'll see that repeated, that midah, that attribute, in just a moment. So let's pick up in verse number 4 of chapter 2, and it says, "V'nei Boaz ba mi beis lechem." At this time, as she's collecting, Boaz, Hine, behold, Boaz was coming from Beis Lechem, from town. Vayomer lakotzrim, and he said to the farmers there, the harvesters, Hashem imachem, he greeted them, God should be with you. Vayomru, and they responded, Vayomru, and they responded to him, Yivarechecha Hashem, Hashem should bless you. So the first thing the commentaries point out is the word v'hine, and behold, sounds like it was like unexpected that Boaz was coming. And that's what the Malbim says, which is that he wasn't normally there. He didn't normally come to the field. He was the owner, but he had his workers. It wasn't so normal for him to be there. And again, this was the hashgacha, this was the divine providence that he happened to come this day when Ruth was there. The Igeres Shmuel has a bit of a different take on it. What was sudden about it? It's that he hadn't been here in a while. It's not that he didn't regularly come to the field, but remember, Chazal teach us that Boaz's wife had just passed away. Boaz had been singing Shiva for his wife, and that's why he hadn't come to the field in a while. And he's back. Behold, he's back, and it's just the day that that Ruth comes. Had Ruth come the day before, she never would have encountered Boaz, but it happened to be she waited until day 7 after her arrival before she came to Boaz's field, and then it worked out that she encountered Boaz, which of course is going to be of great significance. Boaz greets his harvesters with the greeting Hashem imachem, Hashem should be with you, and the Gemara teaches us that this was actually an enactment of based in the court that Boaz headed. Boaz was also the judge, the leader of the people, and he had enacted that people should greet each other with God's name. And the Malbim explains that that's because you recall that this generation, the people at this time were not of the greatest level in their observance and in their care for mitzvos, and there were issues. There were people who were stealing and different things. We'll see later. Boaz is guarding his field. He's concerned about thievery. The Malbim explains that the purpose of greeting people with God's name was kind of to always have God's presence in mind, and that should instruct our behavior. And by greeting people with God's name, that will remind us, like Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid. I always maintain that I'm walking before God, and that should hopefully guide their actions. And that was why he enacted this. And this was an example of that. And actually, they say that's where he was coming from. He was coming from this sitting of his court, and the rabbis on that court had enacted that people should start greeting in this way. And that's what was Hine. That was kind of what was new about this return, was that he introduced this new greeting, and the others responded with a blessing to him. And as we'll see, that may also be significant. So verse 5, Pasuk Hey, Vayomer Boaz l'na'aro hanitzav ala kotzrim, and Boaz said to his lad who was watching, he had a servant watching over the kotrim, watching over the harvesters, and he asked him, Lemi hana'ara hazos. He noticed Ruth, and he said, to whom is this girl? Now, Rashi immediately is bothered, really quoting the sages, quoting Chazal. He says, does every time a girl comes to the field, he inquires about who she is? That doesn't seem very modest. And what was this about? So Rashi explains that actually he had seen two things about her. He had seen her wisdom, and he had seen her tznius, her modesty. He saw her wisdom in terms of that she understood the laws of leket, of what she was allowed to collect and what she wasn't allowed to collect. He noticed that she understood you could collect 2 stalks, not 3. And also the way that she collected it. The way that she carried herself was in a tznius manner, in a modest manner, as opposed to others. She would she wouldn't bend over in the same way that others would, and she would maybe lower herself to the ground in a way that she maintained her modesty. And this is really based on the Midrash. The Midrash says in the Midrash Rabbah that the other women, when they were collecting, they would lift up their skirts if necessary, to be able to position themselves to be able to collect the stocks, and the other women would talk with the male farmers and harvesters, and she acting in a very tznius, in a very modest manner. Why are we comparing her to everybody else? So one of the students of the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Lutzato, Rabbi Moshe David Vali, has a commentary on Rus, and he explains that the other, it's not that the other women who came to collect were not sanua, were not generally, it's not that they generally didn't maintain proper modesty, but when you're poor and you're desperate, so you do whatever you need to do to get food. And so if that meant befriending the male farmers, then that's what they did. If it meant you had to compromise a little bit on the way that they position themselves or position their clothing, then that's what you had to do, because they were in a, obviously if they were collecting, they had fallen on hard times. Rus wasn't like that. Rus, again, you see her bitachon, you see she's not going to compromise on anything, and she's going to maintain the highest standards of modesty, and God will provide. And this is, I think, a very practical idea about not compromising on our principles, even when at work or whatever it might be. We think, but for my livelihood, I need to compromise a little bit. But Rus reminds us that to have bitachon, to have faith in Hashem, and if we have faith in Hashem and we do what we're supposed to do, and we stick to our principles, then we won't lose as a result. We won't lose anything as a result of sticking to our principles and sticking to halacha and to Torah. It's also noteworthy, as some point out, the Mishpat Tosav quotes various commentaries, that Rus is going against the grain. Everybody else is ready to compromise, and Rus doesn't. And that's, first of all, why the sages want to point out the comparison. The others were not as modest. Rus was modest, because that highlights how she was able to. Human nature is to do what everybody else does, especially Rus, who had just arrived from Moab, and would have said, well, these Jewish women, they're they know what to do. I'll just do whatever they're doing. That is something we might have expected, but no, she had the intuition to understand what was right, or maybe the training from Naomi, from her mother-in-law, and she did not conform to whatever everybody else was doing, and that's a great trait in Rus, and really it's a trait that's necessary for a leader, to be able to not conform to what everybody else is doing. And perhaps that's already an important seed for her to be the progenitor of King David, of David HaMelech, because that's what a king needs to be. A king needs to be able to stand up and say, this is what's right, and this is how we should act, even if others are not doing the same. And this is what was so surprising to Boaz, that he wondered, who's this girl who not only is acting in this way, but she's doing it even though everybody else is doing differently. That's what made him inquire. And the answer was in verse 6, Vaya'an hana'ar hanitzav ala kotrim, and the the lad who he had asked, the one who was in charge of the harvesters, answered, Vayomar, and he said, Na'ara Moaviyahi, Hashava im Na'ami mistei Moav. She's a Moabite girl who has come back with Naomi from the fields of Moab. So first of all, he points perhaps to her teacher, Naomi. She came from Naomi. You want to know where she got this from? She's the one who came back with Naomi. She has a great role model in her life, and that's where she learned this. There's, I guess, on a very shot level, the Malbim says that Boaz's question was really that he thought that he saw this girl and he thought that she was somehow related to one of the harvesters, and that's why she was kind of left alone there, because one of the harvesters was helping her out and making sure nobody else was collecting where she was collecting. And that's why he inquired, who is she? And the answer was no, it's nothing to do with that. She's not related to any of the workers. And she's this girl who has come back from Moab with Naomi. And yet she's still entitled, even though she's a Moabite, she's still entitled to collect the matnos aniyim, the gifts to the poor, because she has converted. She came with Naomi, and that entitles her to the same as everybody else. Okay, Robert, you want to jump in?
I'm just wondering how the servant knew who she was.
That's a good question. I don't know. We'll have to ask him.
Rabbi, I heard an interpretation that it just word got around.
Okay.
Because of the uniqueness of who she was and how it happened, and that Naomi left a rich person, came back as a poor person. It wasn't such a big place, just word got around.
Right. Thank you. That's good. Then you just have to wonder why Boaz didn't know who she was, but that could be he was very like we said, he wasn't one to look at the women, and he had not paid so much attention, and now he happened to notice the way that
sitting Shiva the past week, he was kind of,
and he was singing Shiva. Good point.
Oh.
Okay, so
And
fine.
they just came back from Bethlehem.
Yeah, which is where they were though. So that's town. So okay, one other idea here that the Minchas Arev reads into these verses here, the response of this lad, was that actually this servant of Boaz, was concerned that if Boaz was asking who this girl was, Boaz, who was this now widower, he was concerned maybe he was inquiring about this girl because he thought maybe she would be a fitting wife. And this lad did not think it was a good idea for Boaz to express any interest in Ruth. She's so much younger than him, and so he says, first of all, she's a Nara. She's young, Boaz. She's a young woman, and she's a Moabite. And again, he's trying to disparage her a little bit and say she's not fit for you, Boaz. And also, she's not even coming. Even if she converted, she didn't really do it with the right intentions. She came back with Naomi, and she came back because she wanted to be with Naomi, but she didn't really have good intentions. And look, she came back alone. Her husband died. Why did they die? Because they married Moabite women. Boaz, you don't want to get involved in that. And so on. And then he says, it continues, Vatomer in verse 7, and she said, now the way the Minchas Arev reads, this is still the same lad talking, and he's quoting her. He's saying, and she said, he didn't hear her say this, but he's suggesting, Alaktana v'asafti v'amarim, I'll collect and I'll gather amongst the bundles, the bushels, afrei hakotzrim, behind the harvesters, Vatavo vatamon me'az haboker v'adata, and she came and she's been standing here from the morning until now. Zeh shifta habayis ma'at. And except when she sang a little bit in the house. And what he was trying to say was she really is also a thief. She's collecting behind the coat stream behind the other harvesters, and she's waiting basically until her moment when she can take more, when she can take even what she's not entitled to, and this is again the lad, the servant, trying to discourage Boaz from pursuing Ruth as a wife. Okay, Menachem. Don't forget to unmute.
Did you say she was a Nara?
Yeah, the verse calls her an Ara.
And she was a widow already. That's hard to.
Yes. So we don't know how old she was. We will discuss maybe a little bit in a moment how old she might have been. But
Okay.
She was
the
clearly
verse
old enough to get pregnant.
the verse calls her a Nara. The Nara usually is understood to mean somebody young, but it doesn't always have to be. So
I thought they were 12.
you're right. In classic in Gemara language, you're absolutely right. A Nara would be assumed to be somebody who's between 12 and 12 and a half years old specifically. I don't
Right.
think in the Torah we always in the stories in Tanakh that it has to mean that.
All right. Do you know how to unraise my hand? I can't find it.
Okay, it just means you could keep it up, but I just won't call on you again. You'll have to
Okay.
unmute and then.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so continuing on, verse 8. Vayomer Boaz el Rus. So Boaz basically ignores this guy. Then he turns to Rus and he says, "Hello, Shamat BT. You've heard, my daughter, something, not clear what yet. Have you not heard?" And then he says, "I'll tell Pililkot Bisada Acher. Don't go collecting any other field. V'gam lo sa'avuri mizeh. Don't leave this one. Here you should stay and be along here with my maidens, with my own female servants." And he continues and he says, "Einayich basada asher yiktzorun." Your eyes should be on this field that you can collect from, you can harvest from. V'halach afterein, you should go after them. The other girls who are collecting here. I've commanded the lads not to touch you. Vitzamis. And if you're thirsty, you could go to the vessels. You could drink from the water that the boys have gathered. The Malbim says there were like different water. There was some really good water from Beis Lechem that the boys would bring back, and usually they won't give that water to the poor. And he was telling her, "You have permission to go and even get from that water." Okay, but what was he really telling her? So first of all, he tells her, "Haven't you heard? Haven't you heard what?" So the Sforno says he was saying, I'm sure you've heard, this is my field, right? She didn't know who he was. He didn't know who she was. She didn't know who he was. He's saying, you've heard that it's my field. How did she hear it was his field? Because when he came back and he greeted all the workers, they said, "Yivarech Hashem, Hashem should bless you." And what were they doing? They were blessing him that his field should do well. And so his harvest should be a good harvest. So he says, "You see, this is my field. And therefore I can tell you, don't go anywhere else. Because I want to let you collect over here. And you'll be protected here and you'll be fine." He was saying, according to some, that don't even go to a different one of my fields, because this is where I am and this is where I can watch you. And not because he needs to keep an eye on her because he thinks she's going to steal, but rather he wants to keep an eye on her to make sure she's good. And so he said, "Don't go to, even though I have many other fields, don't go to them. Stay in this field." Vatipol alponel. And verse 10 says she fell on her face, Vatishtach la'aretz, and she bowed. Vatomer elav, and she said to him, Madua matzasi chen beinecha lehakireni. Why have you done such good in my eyes? Why have I found favor in your eyes that you've kind of lehakireni, to kind of give me special treatment? Vanochi nachriya, I'm a foreigner. Why are you treating me this way? Vayan Boaz vayomer la, and Boaz said, "Hu gade hu gadli," because I've heard all that you did for your mother-in-law. Again, Boaz is related to Naomi through possibly on both sides, but certainly through Elimelech, her widow, her husband who passed. Acharei mosi sheikh, that you did all this kindness for your mother-in-law after her husband died. Vataz v'avich v'imeit, and you abandoned your father and your mother, ve'eretz molatech, and the land of your birth. Vatelchi el am asher lo yadat timol shosham, and you went to a land that you didn't know just yesterday and the day before, and you kind of gave up everything to come here and assist your mother-in-law. He says, "Hu gade hu gadli." I've been told. There's a double language there, as if there's two things that stand out about her that he points out. Says the Malbim, he was telling her, first of all, that you've done so much for your mother-in-law. We know the relationships of daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law many times are tense at times. Hopefully not, but sometimes they are. And the Malbim says in particular, once the husband dies, to maintain a connection is not likely. And no, Ruth comes and she stays with her mother-in-law. That's the first thing. And not only that, number two, you've abandoned your land. You've come and left so much behind. And this, I see that you're committed to your acceptance of to be a Jew, and that it's l'shem shamayim, it's for the sake of heaven, and I understand that about you. The Targum, the classic comment, Aramaic translation, Targum Yonasan, I think according to many, says over here that he was telling her the following. First of all, I know, and it's not really so clear in the verse at all, but there's kind of certain conversations that are underpinning this whole relationship and questions. One of those questions is a Jewish man allowed to marry a Moabite convert? The Torah says, "Lo yavo uni Moavi b'kal Hashem." A Ammonite and a Moabite cannot enter the congregation of Hashem. Gam dora siri, even a 10th generation one, meaning that Moabite and Ammonite converts are not allowed to marry. They're allowed to convert to Judaism, but they're not allowed to marry regular Jews. They're only allowed to marry certain people, but also amongst themselves. So that's not halacha. So we don't have nowadays anybody who's identified as Ammonite and Moabite. So it doesn't come up nowadays. But that's the halacha. So the question with Ruth was: is she even allowed? She's a Moabite convert. Is she even allowed to marry? Was she allowed to marry? Even if she had converted, was she allowed to marry Machon and Kilion? And now would she be allowed to marry Boaz? They're not talking about marriage yet necessarily, but they're not there yet. But would she be allowed to marry him even? And that's going to hinge on whether when the Torah says that an Ammoni and a Moavi cannot enter the congregation of God, marry into the congregation of God, does that mean only a male, an Ammoni and a Moavi, or does it even a female, Ammonite and Moabite, are included? And this was a raging debate already in the times of Boaz, and Boaz is saying that it's revealed to me, or it's that it's decided, or it's my opinion, or that no, you would be permitted to marry. It's only male Moabites who cannot marry into the congregation, but females Moabite is allowed to. That's number one. And also says the Targum that he understood. He said, I see in a nevuah that you are going to have kings and prophets descend from you because of your great kindness, and therefore, he's saying, you want to know why I'm showing you such favor, because I realize that you're destined to have greatness come from you. And then he blesses her and he says, Yishalem Hashem pa'alech. Hashem should repay you for your actions. Usihi maskortech shlema. And your reward should be full, Me'im Hashem, from God, Me'im Hashem Elokei Yisrael, Asher bas lachasos tachas knafav, that you have come to take refuge under his wings, under his cloak. And this is a classic language that we use to refer to in the context of conversions that a convert has come to take refuge under the wings of the Shekhinah, of God's presence. And that originates right here, that he said, you've come lachasos tachas knafav, you've come to take refuge under his wings. Okay. So part of this is an interesting blessing, right? So Hashem should reward you for your actions, and it should be a full reward, right? So what does he mean by that? So one idea perhaps is noted by the Sefer Zevach Pesach, that as we said, that when Boaz was telling her, actually, you are permitted to marry. You are Moavi. It's only a Moavi, a male Moavite, who can't marry into the congregation, but a female is allowed to marry into the congregation. So the if you work backwards, then, so what was she saying that he responded that way? So if you work backwards, when she said, "Why are you treating me so well? I'm a nachriya, I'm a foreigner." So she may have been saying, like, well, I'm a convert, but I'm a Moabite convert. I'm never fully accepted. And he was saying, no, you absolutely are. And what that means, though, is it just tells us that if she thought that she couldn't even marry a regular Jew when she came originally, so that just shows how l'shem shamayim, how for the sake of heaven, her conversion was. Because one might have thought maybe she converted, maybe she did this because she wanted to be able to find a husband, but to come to the land of Israel to find a husband that she thought she could never find, because she thought she wasn't allowed to marry a regular Jew. So that just shows the commitment of her acceptance of having of the yoke of having of mitzvahs upon her. And it turned out she was wrong, but you just see how committed she was, and therefore that's the blessing he gives her, is that you should get fully rewarded for your commitment because of that great show of dedication. Additionally, the pasuk says, "L'cha Hashem hachesed ki ata tishalem li'ish k'ma'asehu." I'm not sure where this verse is. It might be in Tehillim, might be somewhere else. It's in Tehillim chapter 62. It says, Hashem, you have chesed, you have kindness, because you pay one for his deeds. So the commentaries are bothered, like, why is that chesed? If Hashem is paying us for our deeds, then why is that chesed? We deserve it, we've earned it. So one explanation is, no, because we can only do it with Hashem's help. We can only fulfill mitzvahs with Hashem's help. We get a special siyata d'shmaya, we get heavenly assistance. So we're not even really deserving of any reward, but Hashem gives us reward despite that. And that's referred to in the verse, L'cha Hashem hachesed, unto you Hashem is kindness, that you pay us, you reward for people's deeds. But that's true if a person is already receiving divine assistance. But Ruth, who
who chose this path in life and did not have divine assistance in making that choice. That was purely her own choice. In fact, the pasuk says when Naomi is trying to convince her out of it, it says that Naomi saw that she was insistent on coming, and the word she is extra there, and she saw that she was insistent in coming, and the Mishpat Zav suggests that what it's trying to say was that was her completely. It was completely her own commitment without any divine assistance that she was making this choice, and therefore Boaz says to her, "You should receive full reward for your choice." Okay, so she continues and she responds, Vatomer, and she says, verse 13, Emtzachem beinecha Adoni, ki nichamtani, I should find favor in your eyes because you have consoled me, in that the Malbim says you've committed to providing for me. I was without a husband, I was without a livelihood, and now you've given me consolation. And also you've spoken to the heart of your maidservant. I viewed myself only as a simple maidservant, or not even as a maidservant of yours, and you've comforted me, you've consoled me, and you've told me that I'm important and I'm significant, and that I'm deserving of honor as well. And Boaz says to her, verse 14, Vayomer la Boaz le'es ha'ochel, when it was time to eat, Goshi halom v'achalt min alechem, come sit next to me, the Malbim says, and you should eat from the bread. V'tavat pitech b'chometz, dip your pieces of bread in vinegar. V'atesha mitzad ha'kotzrim, and she didn't accept his invitation to the head of the table, but she sat with the harvesters, vayitzbat la'kali, and they passed her kernels, roasted kernels, and vatochal, and she ate, vatispa, and she was satisfied, vatosar, and there was even left over. Verse 15, vatakam lilaket, and then she got up to get back to work to gather more. Vayitza Boaz es na'arav le'mor, and Boaz commanded his lad, saying, Gam ben ha'amarim telaket v'lo sachlimua. Allow her to collect from amongst the bundles, the bushels, and do not embarrass her. V'gam shol tashulu la min hatzavasim, and you should actually deliberately pretend to forget bundles. V'azavtem, abandon them, v'likta, and she will then collect them. V'lo sigaruva, and don't scold her. Allow her to go home with plenty. V'atelakit basada ad ha'erev, and she collected in the field until the evening. V'tachbot es asher likata, and rather again than schlepping back all the bundle, all the stalks, which include chaff and straw that are not necessary, she banged out the kernels there. And she ended up with an ephah worth of barley. Vatisa vatava ha'ir, and she got up and she came to the city. Vaterech Moses asher likata, and her mother-in-law saw all that she had collected. Vatiteng las asher osira misava, and she gave everything that was left from what she had eaten at the meal. She had leftovers from that she gave to her mother-in-law, and even though it may have looked like she didn't have so much because she wasn't carrying all these stocks, she was just carrying the kernels. But no, Naomi understood. She saw, and Batera Chamosa, she saw what she had collected, and she understood that there was really a lot there. Vatomer la Chamosa, and her mother-in-law said to her, Eifo likata yom, where did you collect today? Vanasis, and where did you must have done more than that because you also have food that you brought back. Yehi makirech baruch, whoever treated you this way shall be blessed. So she told her mother-in-law all that she had done with him. Vatomer, Shema Isha Asher Asisi Imo Hayom Boaz. She said, the man who I did for today was Boaz. Now, it's a very interesting language that she uses because she makes it sound like she did Boaz a favor. She says, the man who I did with him, it sounds like she did for him. It was Boaz, as if she did Boaz a favor. And the Malbim says that that the idea is that Boaz made her feel as if she was doing him a favor, that maybe for taking care of her mother-in-law, his relative, or just by giving him the opportunity to provide for her, she was doing him a favor. And it's true, when a person in need provides us an opportunity to help them, they are doing us a favor. We get more from helping someone than and Chazal say this, more than that the ani, more than that the Baal Habayis, more than that the provider helps the poor person helps the Baal Habayis, helps the provider, for two reasons. One is because we get mitzvos as a result, and one is we even get rewarded in this world with if we are using our wealth to provide. So God gives us as reward more wealth to be able to give it out more. Now, that being said, it's not the job of the ani of the poor person or the person who's receiving a chesed to say, oh, I'm really doing them a favor. I don't have to say thank you. Rather, we have to also, when we receive a favor, when we receive good from someone, to still have hakar stov, to have gratitude. And so when Ruth is saying that I did something for him, she's not saying, look what I did for him. She's really saying that he made me feel like I did something for him. And finally, just to finish up the chapter, Vatomer Rus Hamoaviyah, and Rus the Moabite said, actually, I take that back. I think as much as I want to keep going, we're going to pause and stop with just a few verses left in the chapter. And we'll pick up from verse 20 of chapter 2 next time.